was interesting though to see that, because we can't see these structures, right? And we kind of, I guess, get used to our reality and get used to our perception, and we consider it sometimes, the only way of perceiving reality, and or we at least infer when we see other people that we're like, well, why don't they understand this, or why don't, we might have that kind of perception of like, well, this is the way to see reality, right? But to see reality in a different way, and when he talks about magic and stuff, to consider that we would consider time in such a way that it was circular, whereas like each year, so in the summer, the next summer after that would be the same time, if that makes sense, right? That it's not a linear process; it's something that reoccurs.
Yeah.
So, but it's just interesting to like kind of shift our thinking, because it's hard to imagine even what it would be like to think that way. But definitely, I guess I'm starting to see it more in my own experience. Um, just how this kind of shows up in our memories from the past, and also from some people we might be interacting with. So,
Yeah, and yeah, bouncing off that, I mean, I really also appreciate what Combs does in the book, and he kind of brings us through the levels, right? So we kind of get a sense, a felt experience of what it's like at these different stages, and I think that's a really valuable exercise because, again, with the same old slogan, you transcend and include, but really we kind of tend to forget, and I think there's a tendency to just sort of lop off lower levels, right? And so to have a chance to dive back down the spiral into these
yeah,
lower levels, lower stages is a really interesting experience and really fruitful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like just sort of at the other end, he speaks about how does he call it? He calls it the quality of time. So Blake, what you were saying about sort of how we perceive our experience and sort of how we relate to time passing,
yeah,
that at integral stages, I think he called it luminous experiences. The example he used was snow falling at night. It's not that snow fell from 3 a.m. to 5 a.m. It's that snow fell in the night.
Yeah.
So you can feel even the more robustness and sort of, reflecting or looking at reality in a way that sort of sees its fullness. It wasn't just that snow was falling between 3 and 5, which, technically it was, but there's so much
Right.
more there, and then it's
Yeah.
bringing that same perspective to, each moment in the day, every experience in your life. So it's sort of interesting just to reflect on that and see how many moments throughout the day you're actually in that place where you can appreciate sort of, the subtlety and texture of what's actually going on around you.
Yeah.
And I think on a practical level too, as well, is when we're paying attention to these levels, that Ken Wilber often says it's like psychoactive, right? That when we pay attention to levels and structures in our own life, and how we consider life in general, it's psychoactive, meaning that we want to grow and we want to develop as we start to learn more about it. And that's what I really like about this, is just that the fact that it really, I think, helps growth in a very positive sense. And to consider that our perception right now, although it might seem like it's the final kind of thing, it's going to develop as well, right? Like there's obviously things that are higher than us, or more embracing, that we
Yeah.
can't yet experience, or that we might have an intuitive sense of some of it, but we're not living in that experience right now. And
No,
the
that's
people at
right.
the leading edge, or the people that are really pushing things, perhaps have that perception where we don't necessarily have it completely. What do you guys
And
think
isn't
about
that
that?
exciting?
Yeah,
Well, it sounds super exciting, right? And that's part of the ecstatic sort of urgency to keep pushing into these new domains and new levels. I mean, geez, sounds like a roller coaster ride to me. Cosmic roller coaster.
Yeah.
cool. Well, is there anything you guys want to say about states like that? Because he mentioned that in the chapter, and that was an important piece. Um,
Is there anything I want to say about states?
yeah, I mean,
Well, I
generally,
find that,
yeah,
I mean, we states come and go, right? So I find that it's important not to get too caught up in states. I think a lot of us, I know in my personal experience, and a lot of people I see, would try really hard to cling to certain states, right? Like, oh, I really want to be happy, and I really want to feel good. And it's like your whole life becomes about that. But when you start to open up to a different sense of what life is about, and if it's moving into this new territory, then suddenly you can't be too concerned about always feeling good. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to make those movements that might be uncomfortable or somewhat scary or whatever, that might induce a state of slight anxiety or whatever it might be, right? So I think it's
Yeah.
important to hold the states lightly and watch them go by, and and come through you, pass through you, not get overly attached.
Yeah. The really interesting piece about states for me is when he talks about sort of the four qualifiers, either to get you into a state or to keep you there.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't remember all the names for them, but
Yeah, I thought it was a little abstract, but
yeah, but I mean, it's sort of interesting because when you're growing and developing, you're always wanting to see sort of the leverage points that'll either hold you in inertia or sort of spring you forward, and just recognizing when you're engaged in one of these sort of I don't even remember what he called them, but one of these activities that sort of keeps you in a state of consciousness is just interesting to sort of bring into your awareness of what's going on around you. And also, I mean, moving forward, ways to sort of, how would you say it, to sort of diminish the effects of some, cultural norms that are sort of a drag, an evolutionary drag.
What do you mean by that, Emily? Like, what are you speaking to with that?
Well, so, the things that, why does meditation work so well? I mean, there's 82,000 reasons, but one of them is because you stop engaging in the activities that keep you in your normal waking consciousness. You stop doing like reading a book or making dinner or taking a shower. Those things are things that sort of lock us into that state of consciousness. And I mean, Andrew Cohen always says, like, one of the most important things when you're starting out is to have experiences, and how do you have experiences? It's altered states of consciousness. It's sort of having a wider sense of what's going on, And so one of the 82,000 reasons that meditation works is because you're stopping the thing that's keeping you in your normal consciousness, So going forward, thinking about those points of entry, But yeah.
And that's one of the main practices, right? Is that if you have deeper amounts of state experience, it does have an effect on the stages that you would likely move through. Not completely, right? I mean, Ken Wilber often talks about the fact that there's people that have these, very profound states, like they might have enlightenment within, non-dual awareness, but when they come out of the practice, they could be Buddhists, and they could, say, world war, like we should go to war, right? Because from them it makes sense from their ethnocentric perspective. But in their state experience, they might be enlightened, but their, I guess, worldview hasn't developed yet. So but it does seem to have effect, the states, on our perception. I mean, we could talk more about that, but that's kind of another piece. But does that resonate with you guys?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Ken Wilber, he always says you're not fully enlightened unless, you're able to sort of hold these higher states of consciousness. But then also if you've, accelerated through all of the developmental stages that have existed, So he and Andrew both use the example of Buddha, He was a very powerfully enlightened being, but at his time, there wasn't a developmental stage that sort of recognized the equanimity of male and female, of women. And so, he was enlightened for his time, but if you literally just took him from then to now, he'd still have developmental stages to work through, which is just crazy to think about. But it's interesting.
Yeah.
All right, gang. Well, listen, I got to bounce. I got to go. So.
Yeah. Awesome. We banged it out.
All right. Well, this is great, you guys.
Yeah. See you later, Mark.
Yeah. Okay. We'll be in touch over the email, Blake. I guess you'll set it up, buddy.
Yeah. See you, man.
Okay.
Peace.
Later, guys.
Bye.